Title: She Said I Was Too Much Woman, So I Chose Myself and Lost Everything. Chapter 1: The USB That Burned My Marriage. Look, I need to get this off my chest because everyone keeps acting like I'm the villain here. And honestly, I'm so tired of pretending I care what anyone thinks anymore. I'm Bethany. I'm 28. And yes, my marriage just exploded in the most spectacular way possible. But maybe it needed to happen. Everyone's so quick to point fingers at me. But where was all this concern when I was slowly dying inside a boring marriage to a man who couldn't even make me feel like a woman? It all started during what was supposed to be our relaxing family vacation. Cole, my husband of 5 years, had this brilliant idea to stay with his sister Jenna instead of going somewhere actually fun like I wanted. I suggested the beach, a resort, anywhere with actual nightlife. But no. Cole's always about being responsible. Always talking about money and saving for the future. So instead of palm trees and cocktails, we ended up in Jenna's beige suburban nightmare. Jenna is one of those insufferable women who thinks she's better than everyone because she bakes cookies from scratch and puts her kids on organic diets. The judgment in her eyes every time I ordered a third glass of wine at dinner was unbearable. Then one day Jenna needed a laptop. Cole offered his old one, but there were technical issues. I offered up an old USB drive I had in my bag, trying to be helpful. But when I handed it over, Cole hesitated. He looked at me like I was passing him a loaded gun. I told him to stop being paranoid. The truth? That drive had been Ryan's, my ex. I'd kept it for sentimental reasons. Nothing serious. Just old photos and memories. You know how it is when you've had real passion with someone and want to hold on to the spark of what once made you feel alive. I genuinely forgot what was on it, or maybe deep down I didn't. Maybe a part of me wanted Cole to find it. To see that I had once been irresistible. That someone had once worshipped me in ways he never could. That night, Cole was acting strange. Distant. And then, as we were getting ready for bed, he confronted me. He had gone through the USB. And the look on his face, it was like he'd seen a ghost. Or maybe something worse. He didn't yell. Didn't even accuse me. He just asked questions. Specific ones. About things he'd seen. Things I'd done with Ryan. Things I'd never done with Cole. I didn't flinch. I went straight into defense mode. I asked him what kind of man digs into his wife's past like a forensic analyst. What kind of creep watches private videos from a relationship that had nothing to do with him. He was hurt. But all I saw was weakness. He wasn't angry that I had a past. He was devastated that I'd never been that kind of woman with him. And somewhere between his pain and my fury, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit until that moment. Cole had never made me feel like I was someone worth desiring. And now, his insecurities were about to light a match neither of us could put out. Chapter 2: The past was better, and I didn't hide that. Cole thought he could shame me into guilt. Thought his pain would somehow change how I felt. But the truth is, I wasn't embarrassed. I was angry. Angry that he felt entitled to dissect a version of me that existed before he ever came along. He wanted details. Wanted to know why I'd never done certain things with him, why I looked so free in those videos with Ryan. I didn't answer his questions. I didn't owe him that. Instead, I flipped the script. I told him his obsession with my past was sick. That his need to compare himself to a man I dated years ago showed just how insecure and small he really was. What Cole didn't understand, and probably never would, is that Ryan brought something out of me that Cole never could. With Ryan, everything felt electric. Passionate. Unfiltered. He had this energy, this natural dominance that made me want to let go completely. With Cole, even when I tried, it felt mechanical. Like we were following some marital instruction manual. But I couldn't tell him that. Not without crushing him completely. So I did what any smart woman does when she's cornered. I turned the conversation into a mirror. Made him question himself. I told him his jealousy was poisoning our marriage. That he was projecting his own insecurities onto me. That if he felt threatened by my past, maybe it was because he knew deep down he was never enough to begin with. And the thing is, he wasn't. He never chased me. Never made me feel like I was someone to fight for. He loved me, sure, but in the safest, dullest way possible. Our passion had a curfew. Our intimacy had a checklist. So yes, I told him that. That maybe if he had made me feel like Ryan did, desired, dangerous, unforgettable, I wouldn't be pulling away now. He got quiet after that. Like he was realizing it for the first time. And I could see it in his eyes, he was crumbling. But I didn't feel sorry. Because for years, I tried to shrink myself to fit into Cole's quiet, colorless world. I'd been the wife who said no to excitement, who stopped wearing red lipstick, who traded heels for flats and date nights for Netflix on the couch. And that version of me? She was disappearing fast. That night, I texted my friend Kayla, told her about everything. I needed someone to back me up, to validate that I wasn't crazy for feeling suffocated in my own marriage. She told me Cole was being controlling, judgmental. That I deserved to be loved for all of me, even the messy, passionate, complicated parts. I believed her. And I clung to that belief like a lifeline. But I wasn't prepared for how fast things would start to unravel. Cole went quiet. Cold. Passive-aggressive. Every dinner was a silent performance. Every glance carried judgment. And every time we tried to touch, I could feel him hesitating, like he was trying to figure out if I was giving him all of me or just the parts one hadn't already given to someone else. It was exhausting, degrading, and so deeply unattractive. I started pulling away completely. And then, without telling Cole, I reached out to Ryan. Not to start something. Not yet. But to remember who I used to be. And when Ryan replied with warmth, with curiosity, with a simple, "Hey, how have you been?" I felt something inside me flicker back to life. Chapter 3. The coffee that changed everything. Texting Ryan started out innocent. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Casual, light-hearted conversations. Old jokes. Memories. It felt like slipping into a warm, familiar coat that had been buried at the back of the closet for too long. He remembered things about me that even I had forgotten. The way I laughed when I got nervous. How I used to hum to myself while cooking. How I once dreamed of writing a book, something Cole never even asked about. And with every message I felt more alive. Cole noticed the change. Of course he did. I was smiling more. Distant but lighter. He started hovering, asking more questions, checking my phone when I left it unattended, making snide comments like, "You've been really chatty lately, new friend?" I played it cool. Told him he was being paranoid. Told him friends were allowed to have private conversations. Told him he needed to stop acting like a prison warden. But inside I was buzzing. Ryan wasn't just some guy from my past. He was the version of freedom I'd forgotten existed. When he asked if I wanted to catch up in person, just coffee, I didn't even hesitate. I told Cole I was meeting Kayla. And as soon as I saw Ryan walk into that downtown cafe, everything changed. He hadn't aged the way most men do. He looked better, sharper, more confident. And when he smiled at me, it wasn't just polite. It was full of heat, recognition, desire. We talked for hours. It wasn't just catching up, it was chemistry. Effortless. Dangerous. The way he looked at me made me feel like I was glowing from the inside out. Cole hadn't looked at me like that in years. Ryan asked questions no one had asked in ages, about my dreams, my passions, what made me happy. Not what chores I'd done, not what errands I had to run. He asked about me. When he suggested dinner, it didn't feel scandalous. Felt right. One drink turned into 3. Dinner turned into laughter, into stories we'd never told anyone else. I hadn't laughed like that in years. Hadn't felt seen. Hadn't felt beautiful. When he gently touched my hand and asked if I wanted to come back to his place to keep talking, I didn't even pretend to hesitate. The second I stepped into his apartment, I knew there was no turning back. What happened next wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. One I made without apology. Because for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like Cole's neglected wife. I felt like Bethany again. And the second Ryan kissed me, I knew I was in real trouble. Chapter 4. The fallout I didn't see coming. Living a double life came shockingly easy. It wasn't just about sneaking around, it was about finally feeling something worth hiding. With Ryan I was vibrant, magnetic, desired. With Cole I was a ghost. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, even as I crafted excuse after excuse to disappear for hours. Lunch with Kayla. Yoga. Errands. Lies flowed so smoothly I barely blinked. And Ryan? He was all in. Or so I thought. We talked about starting fresh. A new city. A place where no one knew our story. He told me he could see a future with me. He kissed my forehead like it meant something. He made promises. And I believed him. Meanwhile, Cole was unraveling. He'd always been passive, but now he was emotionally vacant. He tried to initiate closeness, little things like offering to cook or asking how my day was. But I didn't care. I didn't want effort anymore. I wanted electricity. Then one night he asked me to consider marriage counseling. I laughed. Right to his face. I told him no amount of therapy would make him exciting. I told him I'd outgrown the version of life he offered. That I wanted more, and he'd never be able to provide it. I said those words with venom. I wanted him to feel the sting. But I didn't expect what came next. One of our mutual friends saw me with Ryan, hand in hand walking out of a wine bar. And she told Cole. When I came home that night the house was still. Too still. Cole was sitting on the couch. His face pale, his mouth tight. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just asked, "How long?" And I answered, honestly, coldly. "Since the vacation." I laid it all out. The affair. The lies. The feelings. I didn't hold back. I told him that Ryan made me feel alive in ways Cole never had. That I hadn't felt like a woman in years. That I didn't regret it. Not even for a second. Cole sat there silent. And then he said the one thing I didn't expect. "I want a divorce." He didn't beg. Didn't plead. Just stood up and walked away. And in that moment, something inside me froze. I should have felt triumphant. Liberated. Instead, I felt nothing. Because for all the fantasy I'd built with Ryan, I'd never stopped assuming that Cole would always be there. That he'd fight. That he'd make it messy. But he didn't. He let me go like I was already gone. And suddenly, I wasn't the one leaving a marriage. I was the one being left behind. Chapter 5. The woman who chose herself, and lost everything. I moved out the same week. Went straight to Ryan's place with a suitcase full of clothes and a heart full of certainty. I told myself this was it, my chance at the life I truly deserved. A life filled with passion, spontaneity, freedom. And at first it was everything I imagined. We stayed up late, talked about cities we'd move to, restaurants we'd open, dreams we'd finally chase now that we were free. He held me like he meant it. He kissed me like I was the center of his universe. I started posting about self-love, choosing happiness, not settling. Every caption was a declaration. I was finally living. Until I wasn't. About 3 months in, the energy shifted. Ryan started coming home later. Less affection. Less eye contact. Fewer future plans. I brushed it off at first. New routine, new stress, adjusting. But then one night he dropped it like a bomb. "I don't think this is working." Just like that. He said it had all happened too fast. That the thrill of the affair had blurred the reality of who we were outside the secrecy. That now it just felt heavy. He said I was too intense. Too much. That my constant need to be seen, to be validated, to be wanted, was exhausting. And I stood there, blinking as the life I blew up everything for crumbled in front of me. He asked me to move out. Said he still cared about me but not in the way I needed him to. Said he needed space. And just like that, it was over. No fireworks. No betrayal. Just indifference. The one man I believed would love me for all of me, walked away the moment that all became inconvenient. The divorce? A disaster. Cole's lawyer had proof of the affair. That USB became evidence and suddenly everything I thought I was entitled to, gone. I moved back in with my parents. At 28. No marriage. No job security. No savings. And worst of all, no one to blame. Because while I spent years crafting the narrative that I was the one who deserved more, what I was really doing was running from the fact that maybe I didn't know what I wanted at all. And Cole? He thrived. He got promoted. Got in shape. Found someone new, someone simple, warm, kind. Someone who fit into his world effortlessly. I saw them once at a cafe. She laughed at something he said and he looked at her like she was his entire world. And I couldn't help but wonder, was it really that Cole had never been capable of loving fully? Or had I never allowed him to? I still tell myself I did the right thing. That I chose myself. That I refused to settle. But alone in my childhood bedroom, scrolling through the filtered lives of people I once knew, I sometimes wonder, what if I gave up a quiet love because it didn't look like the fireworks I thought I deserved? What if the villain in this story was me?